Francis addresses the crowds outside St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, urging healthcare for all, vaccines for the poor, and lamenting many conflicts around the world.
NASA and the European and Canadian space agencies launch a new telescope into space from French Guiana.
Pope France uses Urbi et Orbi, Christmas address from St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, to argue for healthcare for all, vaccines for the poor, and the resolution of various conflicts. Specifically, this year the pontiff lamented violence in Syria, Yemen and Iraq, while also mentioning bursting tensions in Ukraine and Ethiopia. He said, "God is with us, grant health to the infirm, and inspire all men and women of goodwill to seek the best ways possible to overcome the current health crisis and its effects. Open hearts to ensure that necessary medical care and vaccines in particular are provided to those peoples who need them the most. Repay those who generously devote themselves to caring for family members, the sick and the most vulnerable in our midst." This year, crowds were reduced due to the ongoing pandemic, although they were larger than last year when the Pope broadcast a message from the Apostolic Palace to deter crowds from gathering outside.
Bethlehem's Church of the Nativity held a slightly subdued morning service on Saturday, celebrating the second Christmas under the pandemic. It was led by Patriarch Pier Battista Pizzaballa, the top Catholic clergyman in the Holy Land, and it was attended by hundreds of churchgoers. In pre-pandemic times, thousands of pilgrims and tourists from around the world celebrated in the church and the adjacent Manger Square. France is headed towards 100,000 COVID infections a day by January, its health minister said last week, but hospital staff are already exhausted. The pandemic is nearing its second anniversary, and not only is there no end in sight, Omicron has raised the fear of yet more variants. The activity has been sustained all the time, and unfortunately now the staff are tired. People have a certain weariness, and indeed we are in a situation where we have to know how to manage the teams and prepare for other waves, in a long-term vision rather than a one-off one. The unit had 7 severely ill COVID patients on Friday, all of whom were unvaccinated. It would have had more, but 2 of the intensive care beds were out of action because of Omicron-related staff absences. It's demoralising. We didn't get into this profession just to treat COVID. We didn't get into this profession to be exposed to this disease, especially as these patients who in the end are not vaccinated and don't really want care. So it's psychologically exhausting to fight to try to treat people who take up intensive care beds when it could be avoided.
Tenter de soigner des gens qui prennent des lits de réanimation alors que ça pourrait être évité.
Meanwhile, President Emmanuel Macron has resisted imposing major new restrictions, hoping that the booster programme will prevent the health system from being overwhelmed. After 3 months of spewing lava, the volcano on the island of La Palma has finally been declared inactive. It has destroyed 3,000 buildings, cut off roads and wrecked farms and vineyards. Thankfully, no one was injured or killed. The volcano went quiet on December the 13th, and after 10 days without activity, volcanologists declared it inactive. The scientific and technical rigour and the precedents of the historical eruptions in the Canary Islands made it necessary to establish a period of caution until we could say what I am saying today: the eruption is over. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez called the eruption's end the best Christmas present. The loss of buildings and infrastructure is estimated to have cost more than €900 million. But Sanchez tweeted that the damage would be repaired. world's most powerful space telescope blasts off into orbit, headed to an outpost 1.5 million kilometres from Earth. The James Webb Space Telescope was taken up by the Ariane 5 rocket from the Kourou Space Centre in French Guiana on Christmas Day. It now has to travel a distance 4 times as far as the Moon, and it will take a month to get there. And after another 5 months, its infrared eyes will be ready to start scanning the cosmos. First, the telescope's enormous mirror and sun shield had to unfurl. They'd been folded origami style into the rocket's cone. Webb will observe a part of space and time never seen before, providing a wealth of amazing views into an era when the very first stars and galaxies formed, over 13.5 billion years ago. The project is a collaboration between the European Space Agency, the Canadian Space Agency and NASA, who named the telescope after a former director. Government troops rounded up villagers, shot dead more than 30 of them and then set their bodies on fire, according to one witness and local media reports coming out of Myanmar. The alleged massacre was in eastern Moso village, just outside Huproso township in Kaya State. Some photos showed charred bodies and 3 burnt-out vehicles.
In the center of Tbilisi, there is a place where the past has been brought back to life. Old personal belongings are being sold here, and they bring back the memories of Soviet Empire, which lasted for 70 years. There will always be a customer looking for a portrait bust of Stalin, Soviet passports and military decorations. For some, these are just quirky and fashionable collectibles, but for others they bring back horrific memories, which will hopefully never take place again. For some, these symbols represent the joys of young life, when food was plenty and if lucky one could secure a free vacation as well.
There was nothing, no economy. If you wanted to buy anything, you had to go to Moscow and bring it back all the way from there. Some do feel nostalgic about the Soviet times, more or less due to the stability at the time.
We were socially secure, everything was available, ability to travel, high salaries and employment.
On the streets of Tbilisi, here and there, one can still find different examples of Soviet symbols. The infamous hammer and sickle, though for the younger generations these symbols are merely objects of interest. They are too young to remember the realities of Soviet times.
Most importantly, the Soviet Union reminds us that it was a terrorist state, a state which allowed its citizens no free political will, where freedom is out of question and banned.
The Soviet past still influences today's society in many ways. Old views and perceptions of life still shape the life of the young, and this is sad.
In 1991, it was proven that an involuntary bond of 15 states in the Soviet Union was not as unbreakable as once thought, and already disintegrating empire ruined thousands of lives. But 30 years on, the Russian Federation still attempts to control its former colonies and describes those states as a part of its sphere of influence.
Vladimir Putin has stated that the dissolution of the Soviet Union was the biggest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. Now we witness Putin and his Russia attempting to declare the post-Soviet states as a part of Moscow's sphere of influence. They somewhat came to terms with the fact that they lost the Baltics. Those states managed to make it in time and join the European Union and NATO. However, you see the amount of problems present in Georgia and Ukraine.
The empire has taken a toll on people living in the Soviet Union, and the consequences often show themselves in their thoughts and actions even without realization.
The political culture of the Russian Federation, of the other post-Soviet states that emerged as national states from it, continued. And a colleague of mine said very clearly, you can take the Soviet Union out, or you can take Georgia out of the Soviet Union, but not the Soviet Union out of Georgia.
Despite these struggles, the generation which looks forward the West with hope has very clearly expressed its will through the referendum. This generation has firmly confirmed that they shall never give up their statehood and personal freedom.